So what exactly is happening with this CrowdStrike? Like, what is the net result of what's going on right now? Because I still don't actually know what's happening. I just know that everyone's affected. There's some sort of bad kernel file or bad dodgy channel file, as it's been described. And this anti-cheat level kernel driver is causing a bunch of people to have problems. What is the problem and what is happening? I woke up this morning to the internet in shambles over CrowdStrike and how it just absolutely has turned off the internet for banking, for healthcare, for shopping, for airplanes. So in this video, we start reading a couple articles and then we get security expert John Hammond on to explain to me these dodgy channel files, what is happening, what took down Windows, how does it work? So sit back and enjoy the day off. Thanks, CrowdStrike. So for those that don't know, CrowdStrike apparently has destroyed the internet. I don't really understand what the hell is the things that is blowing stuff up, but we're going to go across a lot of these and we're going to try to discover together many things. Like, number one, why in the world are you using Windows? Like, how can anybody tell me that one first? Because that seems like a more important question, okay? I get that there's programmers out there that want to play video games, okay? I get the video. Hey, I understand games. No one's arguing that. But why the hell did you launch a server in a company on Windows? Okay, what were you doing? All right, so let's get started. Let's actually look into this whole thing because this is a story. This has a trail. This has so much to it that I'm not even sure if I can figure out where or how this started without watching something from John Hammond, which, by the way, we do have John Hammond just in case because John Hammond is an actual boss. But let's look at some articles first. All right, CrowdStrike's share price is currently tanking amid a major global IT outage its leadership has attributed to a dodgy channel file. Okay, so I don't use Windows. Can somebody explain to me what a dodgy channel file is? Is that just Jayatan, a back alley channel? At the time of writing, the share price is down more than 19% as security shop to some of the biggest organizations in the world continues to work through issues with its customers. By the way, this is crazy, going down 20%. All right, it's slowly coming back. Look at that, it's slowly coming back. These hoping to catch a flight today might encounter some problems as the Federal Aviation Administration grounded major airlines until further notice. This includes United. By the way, United actually grounds itself. I don't know if you know this, but United is by far the single worst airline that has ever existed. I don't think there is somehow they have beat Spirit Airlines, which when you go onto a Spirit airline flight, they go, "Welcome, bitch," and they like throw some peanuts at you, and that's all you get from Spirit Airlines. And yet somehow United said, "Hold my beer," and they are actually worse. Affected passengers will be notified, and any passenger traveling across the network on Friday, 19th July should check their Ryanair app for the latest updates of their flight. A Ryanair statement said. I don't even know what Ryanair is. Who is Ryan, and why does he have his own company? Why should I trust Ryan? We regret any inconvenience caused to passengers by this third-party IT issue, which is outside Ryanair's control and affect airlines operating across the air. Is Ryanair? It's Irish Spirit. They give you a little bit of corned beef and hash. Welcome, bitch. From the regional perspective, Edinburgh Airport owes longer waiting times to CrowdStrike incident. The wider reports suggesting departure boards are down across the site. Check-in services at Berlin Airport are also impacted. So what I'm learning from this is that EU somehow got duped into using Windows. Isn't EU all about privacy and safety? Love the Irish accent. Thank you. Like, isn't that what they're known for? Is it so they can have the latest Copilot features to help them with security? Is security and privacy going to be AI? If you use AI to help you with security, you might as well just get the lube out and ask Jayatan to come over. Okay? That's absolutely ridiculous. The list of victims is growing faster than our fingers can type. Other airports. So this can't be just this obviously can't just be airport specific. As if UK's health service hasn't taken enough of a battering in recent weeks. Sounds like the UK's down bad in this one. Put me mead. A GP surgery in West London has updated its website to say its core medical management system is affected and online requests are restricted. Holy cow, that has to be actually pretty scary. I understand why you want to move slow. And I totally get why often these old systems are completely legacy systems. But it also blows my mind that a lot of these legacy systems are all Windows and they're always medical. It seems terrifying. You know, our system is much more fragile than we realize. Should I see if John Hammond wants to just come on stream right now and talk about this? All right, Flip. Why don't you take this from here? So first off, just got John Hammond on here. He's a hacker, cybersecurity researcher, Huntress Labs. I actually have no idea what Huntress Labs does, but you're very, very well known. You have an awesome video that people have been linking me like wild about this CrowdStrike update and what's going on. So instead of watching that, why don't we just get a little bit? Why don't you give us kind of like the enough of a view to understand what's happening, and then I'll make sure I link this. Everyone, you should just go watch this also because John is really awesome.
Cool. Thank you so much. I super appreciate it. But hey, sweet. Super glad to spend some time with you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for letting me join the party on stream. But no, I mean, you all know everything that's like blowing up, exploding, imploding. Crazy things for, I don't know, airports and banks, and I see some craziness in hospitals and supermarkets, just a big, significant amount of outages. Yeah.
Like people can't buy stuff or they can't
credit
like, fill
card
inventory.
systems.
They just have no idea what where their stuff is.
More of the like dependencies on tech and systems like credit card payments, et cetera, et cetera. But so yeah, the gist is that CrowdStrike has their endpoint agent for a lot of security protections, and it really ultimately has a lot of that power thanks to a kernel driver. Because look, when you're getting into AV and EDR and a lot of those bells and whistles for cybersecurity stuff, you get some extra access with those permissions levels. Well,
isn't that dangerous? Isn't that like so? Effectively, just sorry for interrupting, but are you saying that CrowdStrike is the anti-cheat of medical?
Yes. So that's it's really funny when we get to parallel those two different worlds. Like I work at Huntress, like you mentioned. I'm glad you threw that in there. But we have a kernel driver for a lot of our EDR capability, and you're exactly right that very well can be spooky and fragile. Like writing code at the kernel level is a lot of room for error. If something goes wrong, if there's one mistake, if there's one code little hiccup, then blue screen of death, computer crashes, et cetera, et cetera. I think that was really the gist of it is, hey, there was a little bit of a hiccup. There was a, whoopsies, mistake, and some channel file, and that's what we keep hearing CrowdStrike mention. And when I had heard some from Brody, I think he's the director of Overwatch over there. I think that's their SOC, the Security Operations Center. I might be wrong. I don't know a ton of CrowdStrike, I'll be the first to admit, because I work at Huntress, and I don't have a CrowdStrike machine.
Naturally.
Yeah. But that is the 1,000-foot view. What have I forgotten? What else can I color the picture for? What are you thinking? What's up?
So they have obviously they have their own form of anti-cheat, if you will, and all these enterprise servers get told why it's really important. They all get brought on. What effectively, especially you from Hunter, so you kind of get the same idea. What exactly is the motivation for companies to bring on these kernel level things into their program? Oh man, I'm making you disappear slowly.
Oh no! I don't know if that was me or what that was. Maybe lighting. But look, for a whole lot of cybersecurity stuff, to be able to get a lot of the signals that they might use for detection opportunities or prevention opportunities or anything that they could do to stop actual malware and real bad things. Well, look, it'd be really cool if they had hooks for different functions, for different API calls that your operating system might be able to do, or be able to more easily look inside of memory, peer back in that RWX stack crap. You know the drill. So all of that is really why they would have that access with the kernel and with their own custom kernel driver. That is a tough to do. You know, it's kind of a pain to deal with all that signing and process to get that where it should be. And I don't know, that's a good feat of engineering, if I may say. But yeah, that is when you see that go wrong, you see that go horribly wrong, which is kind of a bummer to see. I think with some, a lot of folks would talk about CrowdStrike in pretty high regard. Like they're like one of the best ones up there. So this is a little bit of a boo-boo.
So that was a very kind of like general kind of point. But I mean, I guess for me, I just don't quite understand that because in my head, if I were to be running a server, I'd want the most minimal possible thing to be set up. Now, obviously, I don't run Windows, so I don't actually know how minimal Windows can be. Because obviously, from a Docker kind of perspective, or just like in the Linux world, you can get really, really thin operating systems, if you will, comparatively to Windows. When I say thin, I mean we're comparing it to Windows, which is just giant. So Is this because Windows is so impossible to actually just have a very simple instance to just like it's just Windows and your server running? I don't understand why you'd want all this other stuff in a kernel driver. I'm still struggling to see that because when you say malware, I'm thinking, how did it even get on there? Like, how did you even get to the point of having malware? Besides, I mean, I understand Jayatan will get you every now and then, but it's just like that. To me, that's really surprising that people need this level of protection because it sounds like they don't have that level of control over their system.
Yes, is probably the short answer. I had just done a video on some silly, hey, trusted installer stuff to showcase, look, all these different levels or tiers or system of access for what you might be able to do on a Windows computer. And it's not just, oh, your regular Joe Schmo user or the administrator or NT Authority system. There's even trusted installer. So there are more and more of these stopgaps and things that do add a lot of bloat is probably the best thing to say with all of us kind of coming from the Linux world. I know you were mentioning thin clients and just how, you could have things pretty minimal and slimmed down. But in Windows, we're looking at AMSI, anti-malware scan interface. We're looking at ETW, event tracing for Windows. We're looking at all of those different things that might be trace files from different log source providers that other kernel drivers could be in the mix for. So there is just a little bit of too much stuff. And I think exactly right. You just have a growing sprawl of a problem.
Interesting. And so, do you have any information? Because it says a dodgy channel file. Well, can you explain what a dodgy channel file means in Windows world, if you can?
I will do my best. I got to admit, and let me be brutally honest, I off rip was like, WTF is a channel file. What are you talking about? Are you just saying things for the sake of saying things? Yeah. And you know what? No one's really in a place to tell you to sit down, shut up, and explain. Because I'm sure they're like, look, guys, it's a channel file. Leave me alone. Let me get back to work. I believe that is for, hey, staging some communication back and forth between other components with hardware, kernel, blah, 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 voodoo witchcraft land. I can't give the most accurate 1,000% picture, though.
Okay.
I know that it is a thing, and maybe it's using with whatever they might use for vague generalities to talk about something else in the kernel space. I don't know if that's internal lingo, but I gotta be honest, I hit the I believe button and said, okay, you guys are tracking this. Good. We all know and acknowledge there's a problem. Let's look for the fix. So.
All right, so I guess one thing I have not, by the way, Flip Editor, we may want to put this for a brief moment in the beginning because I realize that this thing kind of starts off with a lot of pre-assumed knowledge. So what exactly is happening with this CrowdStrike? Like, what is the net result of what's going on right now? Because I still don't actually know what's happening. I just know that everyone's affected. There's some sort of bad kernel file or dodgy channel file, as it's been described. And this anti-cheat level kernel driver is causing a bunch of people to have problems. What is the problem and what is happening?
Well, hey, trying to take it from the top, you think about automatic updates. You think about, hey, whether or not your computer will update to the latest version. You think a lot about, okay, do we actually have something to install and add a hotfix or actually set up new versioning if we're trying to have new updates come in? It's wild because normally you get into the problem of, hey, what the heck, system administrators, businesses, we try to beat them with the stick of like, you need to patch often, early and often, blah, blah, blah. In this case, it's the vendor, it's the provider, it's CrowdStrike that would push out of their own decision, off their discretion, when these updates and changes will be made. So that is why we saw as if the internet lit on fire in a single instant, because, hey, all of those hosts that did update and the endpoints that did retrieve that rogue channel file or new kernel piece there would fall over. The blue
by
screen
fall
of
over,
death.
what does that mean? Blue screen of death? So it is.
Yes.
It is literally the B-Sod Friday, as I saw.
Absolutely. Yep.
And so, like, every single server just simply. So hold on. So does that mean? So when they did this update, was it like live and then just blue screened, and then no one could actually change it? And I've been reading and hearing that people have to like be in person and boot into safe mode to fix the change. So people are like people with 5,000 servers. Someone in chat had 5,000 servers. You're telling me that they had to go individually to these 5,000 servers and safety reset and do something individually.
Yes. And that is why this kind of sucks. That's why it's, oh, good Lord, Y2K nightmare, blah, blah, blah. shenanigans. Some folks are trying to say, hey, you could do this with group policy. You could try to push out some automated thing and say, hey, we'll go into safe mode and do this change. But like, look, for one thing, you need to have your group policy manager not stuck in a boot loop, and then all the other machines that you would be making that configuration change do via group policy would need to be in the state of actually listening for group policy changes.
Yes.
But they're stuck in a boot loop, so it's like, no, you're screwed. I'm sorry. Walk around with the USB drive for the whole weekend.
Wow, that's a really serious problem. It is a truly manual intervention. So you're telling me that there's entire fleets of people right now that their entire job is just find next machine address, go to machine address, some sort of, I'm not exactly sure. I assume it's some sort of remote login that they could possibly do, and just reset safety mode and go back in, and then boom, we're good. Or do they actually have to physically be in person? Do you know that?
So you would need either some KVM might not be the right word, PXE network boot thing. If you had to do this remotely, you would need to be at the spot where you can see enough of a console, enough of the BIOS where you can shift F8 key, whatever, to get into the safe mode and Windows Advanced Repair startup with command prompt thing. That is only possible and plausible if you don't have BitLocker encryption. So if you're using a technology like BitLocker, where, hey, you actually have the drive based off of some recovery key, that's the only way you'll be able to get into it and use safe mode to be able to make those changes. You need to know the key. And if that will vary between every single endpoint. So again, our poor friend in chat with 5,000 servers, hey, do you know the BitLocker recovery key for all 5,000 of those? And can you manually hand jam that to make those changes and fix those problems? That is why, yeah, big hug ups to everyone running CrowdStrike right now.
Wow. Okay, so this actually is way more horrible than I thought it was. This is actually horrible, is what it sounds. Yeah, this actually sounds just bloody awful. I feel genuinely that's brutal. I mean, your first mistake was using Windows, but your second mistake was obviously getting screwed. So just as like a theoretical question for myself, typically whenever I'm thinking about running servers or doing things, I really want versions not to be magically updated, right? Like this is just like the classic NPM ecosystem failure, is that you have these kind of like movable updates, and all of a sudden you're running, left pad gets updated, and you're like, the internet broke because of left pad. Why do they why is CrowdStrike able to push updates unbeknownst to the person they're using? Like, how is that a good idea, generally speaking?
Yeah. Oh man. So super interesting and wild stuff to dig into. And I don't know if I'm fading into the abyss again. Apologies.
You are.
Okay.
You're coming back. Don't worry. The cloud is now moving. You're now becoming bright again.
Sweet. So it's wild in that, look, you're talking about a cybersecurity company, AV, antivirus, EDR, endpoint detection response. So normally they get to, and I'll note, look, again, I work for a vendor where you just get to say, hey, we got to do it for security, blah, blah, blah. And you just, a little Waluigi sound. So the thing is, if there's some spooky, scary new malware, hacker threats, Giatan 2.0 comes out, then that vendor, the provider, wants to be able to like make the changes and push out updates and do what they need to do. So, hey, we can protect our customers, blah, blah, blah. It's wild where you've got the scenario that, hang on, again, boo-boo accident. Whoops. The vendor is what has pushed out this problematic update. And they can, I think, as what folks have been saying, CrowdStrike found the problem and we've addressed it. We've worked to solve and fix the issue. But at this point, if you try to retract the update and say, okay, this is no longer being deployed and pushed out to endpoints, well, the ones that already got it are already stuck in a boot loop. So that's really the problem and where the world is right now.
This is surprising that something like CrowdStrike, as some people are calling it, don't have things like like canary analysis. Right? Like, why would it not have a way in which you take an update, especially something that's so sensitive and so secure that doesn't go out to 1% of the customers, and then 2%, and like this slow, nice rollout to make sure things are actually working? because pushing out an up, like, I don't care really what company or where you work. This idea of pushing out an update to all of your customers at once feels horrible. Like when I used to run my own servers and do my own PHP admin and do all that stuff, it was absolutely terrifying. And in 2014, early 2014, I had to roll out a huge feature at Netflix. And so we never had this idea of a slow rollout back then. So this is about 10 years ago. I didn't know how to do any of those things. So what I did is I actually just did a mod on the customer ID. I know it kind of sucks for the customers. Like they'd get the same. They're always the test customer, but like did a slow rollout where I incremented a number in a database and just slowly made that mod bigger and bigger and waited for any metrics to crash. Because even like 10 years ago, I was absolutely freaked out about this idea of rolling things out to people that is untested. So I'm just shocked that something at a kernel level would update without like some sort of rolling thing. Does Huntress Lab have some sort of rolling thing? Not to put you on the spot. Do they have access? Do they do auto updates? Do they have rolling releases?
Yes, and not to make it some advertisement cheesy commercial billboard crap, but no, we will test in phishing zones, is to say, hey, you know what? We'll try this with about 100 customers to start with, and then widen that pool to 1,000 and then 10,000 or whatever. You can fractionize that however you want. But no, you're exactly right. I think that has been the biggest critique as to why didn't this get through QA? Did this even go through QA? Who, where, how, et cetera, is the process and workflow there? And couldn't we be a little bit smarter to make sure, look, we've done that internal testing, or we had a smaller sample size of a couple customers before the entire world, the entire internet.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, they did maximize pushing to prod or test and prod. I mean, they nailed the test and prod mentality. Absolutely love the cutting edge mentality.
The deploy on a Friday is the joke I know everyone's screaming and shouting about, but you're right. we hit the money there.
It's like the classic one thing you don't do. Like all developers have internally agreed, we will never push on a Friday because that's kind of just being a jerk. And they're just like, hold my beer. We're going to push a kernel update for everybody or kernel driver update for everybody. That's quite the thing. I'm not trying to make this an ad for you guys, but you guys also aren't the ones in the crosshairs pushing out to everybody on a Friday. So, hey, you guys get a little bit of free advertising because way to be normal and awesome as opposed to just screwing the internet.
Well, no, I appreciate it. And I felt like, you know what, this is where we can have some more of that serious conversation because we have a kernel driver. We could just have easily been susceptible to the same exact thing where we've accidentally bricked all however many millions of customers that we have. But that's to say no one's immune. That's to say, look, we can all have this mistake and whoops, boo-boo. I tried to express in my video, and I know you didn't really need to cruise through it, but if anyone were to watch, don't forget that it's people at the other end of the screen. So they're going to be fighting fires. They're going to be trying to chase this thing and try to make it right the best that you can. So hug ops is kind of what a lot of folks in security tend to say, but just be kind and be thinking of the folks that are doing the best to chase this and fight the fight.
Yeah. Just more of a question kind of on these kernel things. Again, I'm very, very naive in the realm of Windows and all that. So please forgive my naivety in this one. But does a place like Huntress or a place like CrowdStrike, do any of them rely on open source tools or open source software for this? And are they susceptible to these kind of wild security oddities? And I can give you a couple kind of interesting examples about this, but like, does Huntress Lab use a lot of open source, and what open source? You probably don't want to answer that or do want to answer that, but like, how much of this is relying on open source, shall I say? Sorry for the very long-winded question there.
No, absolutely. You're good. Thank you so much. I think it varies. I think inevitably you are going to have a library, or you're going to have, some module or some package somewhere, somehow that someone else in the community and open source created, just as you would expect it with any software. Even at the kernel level, depending on what you do, but oftentimes you'll work with the companies. You know what? I won't name names on that one. Maybe that's touching the hot zone.
Always be smart. Never name names or numbers. That's typically my. That's why when I said what list of packages, like, wait a second, that's a number. Don't name the number.
Yeah. But It's not 100%. It's not you can fractionalize that, and it varies.
Okay.
It's subjective. If I may say, I would note that something that we tried to do and say is like, look, we own our own tech. I think that's a statement of pride, is that, look,
Yeah.
if we got to build as much of this as possible, then we are limiting that attack surface to a Geoton 2.0, again, however you want to imagine that.
Yeah. Because there's this interesting thing that I saw in open source not too long ago. I think I have some joke video on my Clips channel about me yelling about this, but there's a GitHub project not too long ago, Polykill. They called it the Polykill security bug. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Polykill.
Polyfill?
Yeah, the security attack they called Polykill, which the general idea is that that people kind of like do a distributed harassment of service. So like filing CVEs, filing these things to kind of like exhaust the maintainer. Then step 2 is kind of white knighting the maintainer, buying out the project. So Polyfill literally got bought out. They, or part of it got bought out by a company. They bought out a domain. They did something in which was they were able to like almost look like a front to Polyfill. And then 3, just put malware there. And so that's always this kind of like interesting attack vector, which is if people know who's running security, they can effectively exhaust you emotionally, white knight you, and then screw people.
Oh yeah.
And so have you seen any of this? Does this actually exist, or is this just some theoretical nonsense that
it is very rare, but 1,000% I would agree. And that's sinister. I think that's a clever trick. So we tend to laugh and haha at the sophisticated threat actor, big air quotes, of someone being sophisticated, smart, and elite. But you know what? Yeah, there can be some adversaries that are going to do some of those crazy things, like a G10. And I hate to keep harkening back to that. I'm sorry to sound like
he's
a
the most
record.
well-known elite hacker, if you will.
Yeah, but when you talk about those supply chain threats, Log4j, I saw someone mention that in chat just a bit ago. Yeah, those things 1,000% absolutely exist, and they are damn effective when it comes to life. But it is rare when you get to see it like that. So.
Yeah. Well, hey, thank you very much for being on here, John. Besides for the fact that you've had your Twitter here the whole time, and I linked earlier this video from you right here, which I'll link again. Where else can people find you? Any other places you'd like to be mentioned on?
Oh, thank you so much. Hey, YouTube is really the main platform, but you can track me down on Twitter, on LinkedIn. You can find me all over the place. File was found. But super excited. I'll catch you at DEF CON, all the other hacker summer camp and cybersecurity conferences. But happy to be part of it. I'm super, super glad and flattered to be here with you. If there's anything else I can chat about, if there's anything else I can offer, I realized that the video that I released was the my goodness, this is breaking, this is emerging, we are an hour into this shitstorm. Yeah. That if there's more that I could chime in on, a little bit more of the kernel drivers, a little bit more of how this kind of falls apart. But the impact that I really 1,000% wanted to make sure we touched on, and I'm glad that you mentioned it, is this is going to be a manual effort for recovery. It's going to be people physically walking to a computer, doing a couple buttons, and whatever that's 5,000 times over, 15,000 times over, that is where this is going to be a slow recovery effort. But
dang, it just feels so bad because we've all been in a manual situation where we all have to do some sort of really manual thing where we know that you just can't automate it, and it just is super painful to be a part of. But this just sounds, man, heart always goes out to those super just sucky situations.